Most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know the full story of what happened in 1919, or why their entire religion hinges on it. This isn't a minor teaching. If 1919 collapses, everything else collapses with it. The governing body's authority, the faithful and discreet slave doctrine, and the organization's claim to be God's only channel. Today, I'll walk you through the logic, the circular reasoning, and why this is the weak point of the entire religion. And once you hear the logic behind 1919, it's hard to look at the governing body the same way ever again.
You sit on a throne of lies.
If you're new here, like this video and subscribe to make sure you don't miss future breakdowns. So according to Jehovah's Witnesses leadership, here's the story about why 1919 is so significant.
Since 1919 of our common era, the slave has been put in charge of some belongings of Christ. Jehovah and Jesus trust the imperfect slave. Shouldn't we then trust the imperfect slave as well?
No! No! When this governing body member says slave, he means the faithful and discreet slave that Jesus mentions in a parable in Matthew 24. Now, nearly 2,000 years later, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses has turned it into a prophecy about themselves. They claim the faithful and discreet slave was appointed over Jesus' domestics in 1919. That slave is the small, composite group of anointed brothers serving at world headquarters during Christ's presence, who are directly involved in preparing and dispensing spiritual food. When this group work together as the governing body, they act as the faithful and discreet slave. So the Jehovah's Witness leadership, the governing body, claims that they are the faithful and discreet slave mentioned in Matthew 24, and that they were appointed in 1919. Now, they say that the chain of command is Jehovah, Jesus, and then the faithful slave. And apparently, regular Jehovah's Witnesses can't understand the Bible without the faithful and discreet slave. Now, that's not my opinion. That's what their leadership says. To quote a 2016 Watchtower, some may feel that they can interpret the Bible on their own. However, Jesus has appointed the faithful slave to be the only channel for dispensing spiritual food. Since 1919, the glorified Jesus Christ has been using that slave of the organization hangs on one claim, that Jesus chose the Watchtower Society in 1919, which raises the obvious question, why 1919? I'll give you the short version because the long version is honestly pretty tedious to get through.
One eternity later.
Jehovah's Witnesses expected the world to end in 1914. And that didn't happen. So they pivoted and instead began to claim that Jesus began ruling from heaven in 1914. Everything to do with 1914 is based on a web of elaborate interpretations that's honestly fundamentally flawed. But that's a topic for a whole other day. Either way, the starting point is 1914. Supposedly, in 1914, the Jehovah's Witnesses, or the Bible students as they were then known, caught Jesus' eye.
I'm watching you.
But they still weren't perfect. They celebrated Christmas and birthdays, they revered the cross, and they believed that Christians should worship Jesus, among many other things that they now believe are wrong. Still, they were apparently miles above every other Christian denomination. For some reason, we don't really know why. Then, on arriving to inspect the slave in 1918, Christ found a spirit-anointed remnant of faithful disciples who since 1879 had been using this journal, the Watchtower, and other Bible-based publications to provide spiritual food at the proper time. He acknowledged them as his collective instrument, or slave, and in 1919 entrusted them with the management of all his earthly belongings. Now, is there any way someone could test or verify that? No. Seriously, there's literally no way to test that. It's an assertion based on zero evidence.
You got nothing.
And despite Jesus supposedly choosing and cleansing the organization, all those bad practices like celebrating Christmas and birthdays, idolizing the cross, or worshiping Jesus, well, those continued for years. The organization also went on to falsely claim that millions then living would never die, that the patriarchs of old would be resurrected in 1925, that the world would end in 1975,